Welcome to another teaching segment in watercolor. I'm pleased to welcome you back. This is our second segment on a demonstration that I'll be doing regarding focal points and how to have a really good catching center of interest in your painting. I'm going to be working on a source photo that I took as I was traveling through in Illinois, and I'm just so attracted to these white farmhouses in the sunlight that they're just really one of my very favorite subjects. And I wanted to start with showing you a really cool help that I discovered recently that has been really a fantastic little tool to help you with placing your focal point and cropping your photos. It's called Value Viewer, and it's an app that you purchase. It's put out by Plein Air magazine, and you just bring in one of your photos, and I'm going to bring in the one that I'm working on today. So it's this same photograph that you see here. But what you can do with this is really cool. You can enlarge the photo, and you can move it all around so you can have your focal point in any part of the rectangle that you want. And then the other thing that is just really valuable with this is you can put it in a gray scale, put it in gray, or what they call no tan, which is where you have no color, but you can regulate the levels on this so that you can do it to where you've got a lot of some gray and some a little bit of gray and a little bit of black. Trying to get it to where we have the grays come in. Anyway, it's just really fun to play with. Now, another thing that you can do is you can have it show in the size that you want to paint in. So, for example, I'm going to be painting in an 8x10 format today, so I'm cropping it to an 8x10 format. And then another thing, I'm going to go back and put this back into color. But that's about right where I'm going to have my my subject today. But then I can go back and put on it, I can grid it so that when I want to draw it on my paper, I can have it already gridded. So I can print out from this app, and it's just really, really a handy tool for helping you. And on this one, you can also put on the golden mean or the golden proportions where you're divided into the thirds that can help you in placing your focal point in the most aesthetically pleasing area of the rectangle, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. So anyway, this is a really handy app, and it's only $4.99. It's well worth the money, and I've been using it a lot in my painting. So talking about focal points, the focal point is the area of your painting that you are going to want people to be drawn to the most. It's what you're going to be talking about. It's the story of your painting, and it's the thing that you want to sell to your viewer. It's what you want the viewer to notice. And it should be the reason that you painted the subject in the first place. So if you're not excited about your center of interest that you're focusing on in your painting, nobody else is going to be either. It's Catherine Statz, who is a painter that I admire, said that there better be a party in that center of interest when the viewer's eye gets there, or it's going to be a big letdown. So some of the things that we can do to make that really a way for the painting to draw the viewer's eye in are several things. First of all, the area of greatest light is going to be what draws the eye first. As living organisms are drawn to the light as they grow, plants and all living organisms, we too are drawn to light, and the human eye is particularly attracted to light. So, with that being said, you want your very lightest light to happen in the center of interest in your painting, and that's where that will grab the viewer's attention right off. Then you want your area of greatest contrast to happen in this focal point area. And there are several different contrasts that you can place there that will be invaluable to helping that stand out. You can put the most saturated color in that area. So that will be the greatest color against maybe more grays in the rest of the painting. You want to put more dimension in that area, putting the dimensional form in the area of the focal point against the more flat areas of the painting will increase the drawing point of your focal area. You'll want to use your hardest edges there because hard edges will also draw the eye against the softer, more diffused parts of the painting in other areas. And then you also want to use the busiest parts of the painting in that area against the more restful parts. And then just talking quickly about where to place the focal point, I showed you a little bit about the golden mean or the golden way, whatever they call it in art. And the best way for me to do that is by using the rule of thirds, where I just take my paper or my photograph and draw, divide it into thirds, both horizontally and vertically, and then where those lines intersect are going to be the points that are the most aesthetically pleasing to place your focal point. And so I have done that in my painting for today in the right, the upper right part of the painting, and that's where I'm going to be having the focal point in this painting today. The photo that I'm painting from actually has it right square in the middle, which is it's not a really good area to put the main part of the painting that we're talking about. So let's get started. I'm going to be starting out with the triad of color, and it's going to be an initial wash or an underpainting that I'll start with, which is going to be a high key triad, which means that I'm going to be using a red, a blue, and a yellow. And for this painting, I'm going to be using a alizarin crimson. And I'm going to use yellow ochre as my yellow. And then my blue is going to be manganese blue. And these are very pure primaries. And I'm going to make these puddles on my palette that are very wet and juicy. And I'm going to keep them separate, but let them mingle as they want to on the palette. And most of the mixing that I'm going to do is going to come through onto the paper as I'm applying these washes. And you'll notice as I do this that I'm not going to be concerned really with local color or trying to match the colors per se in my reference photo. As you can see, I'm using a bright red, which is not typically something you would think of in foliage. And I'm going to be applying this all over everything in the painting that is not in the sunlight. Carefully leaving some of these whites as white paper. going to punch in a little bit of bright yellow in here because of that foliage that's going to be in the sunlight right there. And I just went onto my white pole that I didn't want to do. So I'm just applying this wash really loosely, and the other kind of purpose for this is to just get you going, free you up, and get you excited about what you're painting. I love these farmhouses in the Midwest. They're just so stunning and inviting, and there's just something about a white porch that I can't resist. And so that is definitely what I'm talking about in this painting, is this beautiful farmhouse area over in here. I'm going to leave some of these whites in the down here in the grass foreground, and I'll come back in and probably cover some of them up. But another good way to help the eye into a focal point is to give it a stepping stones or a pathway in, and that's what I want to do with this little white stuff that's happening down in here. Hopefully I'll be able to. So as you're looking at this, you're probably thinking, wow, what a mess, and it is, but you got to be not afraid to make a mess to start with, and then as you keep going, you'll hone it in to what you want it to be. Okay, so I'm noticing that this is actually a little bit in shadow under the leaves here, so I'm gonna run the shadow on that a little bit. Now you're seeing me dipping into some of my sap green, and I'm gonna just put a little bit of that over into here, because I know I am gonna go into a green eventually in this foliage over here. That part where I just sort of mistakenly went over my white pole there, I'll cover with some leaves anyway. And then kind of brighten this up too over here. And this very first wash with all of this color, you don't want to go darker than a value 5 on the value scale. So you're wanting to stay on the lighter half of the value scale as you're as you're putting this in. So at this point, as you're looking at this, you can see how abstract I've kept everything. I'm not doing any real detail yet. And that is on purpose. This initial first wash or underpainting is completely without dimension at this point, really. It's just getting this color down, and I know that I'm going to be coming back in and fixing it up when I do, so I don't want to fuss with it or worry about it. And I just am concentrating on trying to keep these colors clean and focusing on leaving this beautiful white shape that's going to end up being my focal point in the painting. So at this point here, I think I will take a little break and dry this with a hair dryer. So that's going to flatten my paper down, and we will move on to the next second phase of the painting. But this should go very quickly on this phase, and like I say, you're just trying to get beautiful color and really nice abstract pattern of what's in shadow and what isn't. Okay, so now that I've got my paper dry, maybe I should just take a second and tell you the paper that I'm using is a Laurel cold press, and it's a little bit of a new paper for me. I had a huge heartbreak with Winsor Newton cold press paper, 140 pound weight. They quit making it, and I've used that for ages, and so I had to hurry and find another brand, and I'm pretty pleased with this Laurel. Now I'm going to start coming in with my second triad, which is going to bring in the darks and the mid-values of my painting now. And I'm going to work a little bit on the focal point to start with here. I want to get that pretty much to a more complete state, and then I'll go back into these areas of foliage that are just going to be more quieter areas of the painting with less dimension and less color. So in this phase now, I'm going to be using a darker blue, my ultramarine. My red is still going to stay the ultramarine, permanent alizarin crimson. And you do need to be sure you get permanent, because if it's not, it will fade. And then my yellow in this triad is going to be not that. That's the wrong color. I'm going to be using a transparent oxide red, which can be used as a yellow or a red. In this case, I'm going to use it as a red. But I'm going to backtrack just a little bit right now. I think in the focal area here, right under the porch, I still want to use some of these bright primaries in bringing this area down. And now you'll notice I'm also moving into using a little bit smaller brushes. I'm using a number 8 brush, which is kind of my brush of choice when I'm working on an 8x10 painting. want to get a little bit of yellow in there too. And then you can see how green this is down into here, so I'm gonna pull a little yellow down in there to, I like that warm green that's reflecting up from the grass. And so as I said, in the focal area here is where I'm going to put more detail than what will be in the rest of the painting. So this slows down a little bit more here than the other areas. And now you can see that I'm painting behind. In other words, I'm leaving these little pieces here and here that were initially that original wash, and now they're looking as if they're white, but because they're in shadow, they're a little darker value than a white. Okay, and then I like this kind of warm little bit on the bottom of the door here. Okay, but that little part right in there is probably going to stay pretty well untouched now through the rest of the painting. I've got that about the value that I want, I think. And my hardest edges are going to be right here where that pole is standing out from the screen of that doorway. Okay. And then I'm going to put in a little bit of the shadow in between these little things on the porch. There's just something about a Victorian porch that, it just calls to me every time. Okay. And a little bit of that's in shadow, so I'm going to fling that just a little bit. Okay. All right, now I am going to probably start scaring everybody. I'm going to come in now with this darker color, darker triad on the back of this foliage back here. And this is going to be really a nice dark foil against that white porch. And you can come back in on any of this color that you've already put down, as long as it's dry. It has been dried first, and now I'm re-wetting it. And so as long as you have it re-wet, you can get some really pretty effects back there with your paints, just very soft and diffused. And believe it or not, this is going to read as a green once we get this all in here. And I'm coming in and still putting more yellow in here, even though that's not really part of my triad there. This is going to come way down in here to the edge of the grass down in here, so I'm going to wet down to here. And then I want to be careful that I preserve a lot of this really pretty bright foliage near the porch, because that's really part of the focal area too there. I'm going to pull in some of my green in there too. But as you can see, the value of having this board on such a slant is that it is pulling all of that color together and blurring it into one smooth value back there. Okay, and then I want to come down into here and start making this look like it's grass, leaving a little bit of the underpainting showing. And here I'm actually working a little bit on dry paper right here, because I'm going to want this foliage coming out here to be very very hard edge. That's going to kind of make a little arrow to the eye to point right down into that porch. We'll just let that blend and merge a little bit. I will come back in there and blur that in to each other, to the color a little more too. Okay, now I want to work on adding the dark window in. What's behind over here? So I'm kind of picking out some of the leaves to highlight and leave showing here. So that I can kind of tell that that's a window back there, hopefully. Do you see how I'm trying to keep more of the busyness right around my focal area here? Trying to indicate a little bit of the clapboards back there. I still want a little bit of a darker value back behind the porch there. Okay. Okay, and the one thing with sitting here painting is that you can't really, on camera, you can't really get up and back away, which is really required to see how you're doing on your work. But again, I'm trying over to just make an abstract pattern of 3 values, a light and a dark and a medium, and that's how the foliage reads to the eye. Okay, so I think what I'll do now is start a little bit more on this foreground, leave that background foliage for a little bit and work on the grass. And these kind of main stepping spots in for the eye, I'm going to leave pretty light. But I do want to get a nice kind of a medium green wash on there. I don't want to go too dark though, but in my reference photo in through here is a little darker. I want to even take that up into there a little bit. And I can leave other little spots as we're going too, and it'll just show that kind of pretty underpainting that was there before. I'll lighten that up a little bit here as we get closer to that doorway. Maybe we'll make that into 2 spots. I don't want to get too much going on down here in the foreground, because I don't want it to detract from the focal point, which is right up in there in the in that doorway. Okay, so let's let that dry. And while that's drying, we'll come back into the foliage up there. That needs to be smoothed down and blended together a little better. I want to be careful that I don't undo all that beautiful color that I've got in here, so I just feel like that value needed to go down a bit there, a little bit darker. And then I'm guessing that there's probably a shadow here. I'm having trouble keeping my left hand off that wet paint over there. Yes, I'm a lefty. And right under here, I think, is a little bigger shadow or a thicker shadow. Okay. And then along here, this is gonna, just putting a few little darks in here is going to anchor that house down. Let you know that there's all this grass around. And probably the same thing over here, even though I can't really see it, because that barbecue grill's in the way. Okay. And underneath here we've got those little tiny holes in the pattern of the Victorian work. I want to try to reclaim a little bit of that upper part of the woodwork there that I lost. I'm going to rub that out with the paper towel and blot it. Okay, that's reading a little better now that that's part of the roof there, or the roof on that porch. Okay. We need to get a little bit of defining back, negative painting back behind here to set off these big leaves. Kind of let that show back in there. Okay. Sometimes you want to choose either to put your detail in the shadows or in the light, one or the other. And it's looking like in the photo there you can see more of the detail in the shadow area. So I'm going to kind of indicate the boards back there. Okay, now this stuff out here is still calling too much attention to itself. I need a darker value in here, coming up under this foliage, and some darker stuff up in here. And then that's going to about do it. So I think I better dry this painting once again before I come back in on it. That also, I might have already said this, but that will also settle the paper back to flat. The one thing about the watercolor paper, this new paper that I'm working on, it doesn't seem to dry quite back as flat as my other Winsor Newton paper did, but it's still a nice paper. I'm pretty happy with it. So that's a little plug for watercolor paper. All right, so let's wet this. Actually, I'm going to clean my palette a little bit too. I don't want to get into too much mud here. And it's good to keep spraying your paints down too. They tend to tack up while you're working any length of time too. So I'll do that while I've got that going. Get some cleaner color on here. Okay. Oh, I must have hit the cadmium orange. Whoops. Okay. So let's wet this back. Back in here is where I'm feeling we're needing more of a valued darkening. I have to kind of start being careful not to get muddy back in there now. I said I was going to spray my paints down and didn't. Okay. I have to be careful back in there not to get muddy now because I've got so much dark color already on there. But as long as I wet it, as I said, I'm going to throw some sap green in there. If you didn't hear that while I was swishing, it's sap green. Okay. I like having those pops of violet back there because it kind of continues repeats the triad, the original triad that I was working with, and adds harmony to the painting. I don't know why it takes me 2 or 3 times to get the value that I want back there, but it seems to. I'll add a little bit of that transparent oxide red back in there too. I'm still feeling like my blue is not as fluid as I want it. I'm getting a little bit too wet up in there. This yellow that this really vivid yellow right here is cadmium yellow medium. And I'm just going to put some pops of that here and there to look like a little bit of foliage is in the sunlight. It's really a strong yellow, and it can hold its own even against those real darks. Okay, so I've now left this part over here just really, really diffused and soft, so that even though I've got some pops of bright color, they're soft edge, and so they don't compete as much with what's happening in the area where I want the eye to really go. And then down in here, I still feel like there's this part of the grass that should be a little bit darker. So I'm going to wet that again. Okay, what I'm doing over here now is just adding a little bit more depth to this grass down in the front. It feels like that needs a little bit of strengthening. As I'm looking through at my photo. Just kind of smoothing this grass around down in here. And I think I want to come in on the right side and do the same thing. I think it needed a little bit of a darker value there. Now just some final, I think just a little bit of final work on it, and we're about there. Yeah, I think I'll leave those grassy areas that I've left white are a good little stepping stone area in for the eye. I'm going to soften a little bit of edges over in here. And then I'm going to take a little rigger. That's a brush with really long hair for putting in a little bit of detail work. I want to do where these branches are coming down over in here. I want to indicate some little twigs and things coming down. It's easy to overdo that, so I don't want to do too much. But right here is kind of a good spot to show maybe a branch coming through there. Okay, and I want to, I need to make that little weed or whatever it is there stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to put a little bit of a value behind that on the house back here. So that you can kind of see something going on there. Okay, and maybe just down at the base there where they're, right down in here, I need to kind of, I think, give that a bit of a anchor. Making that a little shadow on the porch there too. Don't want to overdo it. It's easy to really overdo the detail. Okay. Let's pull out one of these, I don't know, whatever you call them, but they're the place where the window's divided, so that you can tell that that's a window right there. Sometimes just these little tiny details are important in describing things. Okay, well, I am about there, I think. This is just a demonstration, so it's not, a probably totally finished painting, but I'm pretty happy with what we've got there now, and thinking we can call it about there. Trying to see if those little spots are detracting or not. If I come back with a little bit of yellow over them, I think maybe we'll calm those down a little. Okay, and well, I think that's what I wanted to say. Look at that beautiful porch, and kind of want to maybe make this little part not so straight along there. And then when I've got this completely dry, I will take my pencil marks out. And that's always a fun part. Okay, I kept my white shape where I wanted it. I think my focal point is working really well. I've got most of my contrast in that area. I've got my hardest edges there. My brightest color is surrounding the focal area. I've got the restful areas away from the focal point, and the busier areas are in this area that I'm talking about. So I feel like it's a success. Maybe not a masterpiece, but it is showing what I wanted to show. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope maybe this was helpful for you in thinking about defining focal areas in your own paintings. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time on one of our teaching segments. Thank you.